All sorrows will fade one day, but the joy you gave me will keep deep in my heart. Summer 2000. I received news that my old house was going to be demolished. While sorting through old belongings, I found a dust-covered diary. On its first page was a date, spring 1990. The 1992 saw a craze for going abroad. My father, as head of the Returned Overseas Chinese Association, often organized social events. I first met Bai Jindu one early spring evening in 1990 at a gathering for Returned Overseas Chinese held in the Jiuotong University residential compound. I had just come back from taking photos and planned to sneak home to sleep, but I ran into my father, red-faced from drinking, at the entrance to the community dining hall. He told me to go down to the basement to fetch some wine. The community basement held nothing but wine and odds and ends, yet that day someone was there. The boy looked no older than me, a navy-blue shirt tucked loosely into his trousers, tilting his head back to drink beer. The fizzy liquid slid down his throat with a loud gulp. When his gaze met mine, the corners of his eyes curved slightly. Somewhere in my mind, I thought of a little fox from Japanese ghost stories. We stared at each other in the dim basement when footsteps sounded from the hallway. A clear voice called out, Jindu-Ge, Jindu-Ge. Are you here? The boy stepped back behind the door. When Shu King poked half her body in, he grabbed her at once. Shu King jumped in fright, standing obediently still, her eyes glistening with tears. He seemed amused by her look. Leaning his head down slowly, at the crucial moment, I cleared my throat on purpose. Shu King stared at me as if she'd seen a ghost. When Aunt Wendy, could you wait until I've got the wine before carrying on? I asked. Shu King glared at me, her earlobes bright red, then darted away like the wind. The boy followed slowly, pausing beside me. So, you're Zhang Wendy. I waited for him to say more, but he was already gone. I learned who he was later at the banquet. The guest of honor that night was an engineer who had returned from Japan. Surnamed Bai, everyone called him Engineer Bai. The boy was his only son, back in China for spring break from Japan. He had an unusual name, Bai Jindu. As night fell, the group went to stroll the bund. I stood on the balcony watching them leave. Shu King walked lightly ahead, while Bai Jindu followed on hurriedly, hands in his pockets. On my bedside lay a book of Japanese ghost stories called 100 Tales. It contained a few haiku about fox spirits. Later, I copied one in blue ink onto my new diary. A fox takes the form of a young lord, wandering joyfully through the spring night. Years later, I would realize all had been foreshadowed. Some people, some things, are like ghost tales, nothing but a fleeting dream. My name is Zhang Wendy. I was born into a scholarly family. My grandfather was a professor at Jiuotong University. My father and uncle graduated from top universities. Even Shu King, my niece just 10 months younger than me, had excellent grades and a bright future. They were all native Shanghainites except me. I was the child of Cent-down youth, raised in a small town, and only returned to Shanghai later. I inherited none of the Zhang family's fine traits, plain-looking, poor-rat studies. Stubborn and disobedient, my father tried to reform me several times, all in vain. The conflict between us peaked when I became obsessed with photography, skipping classes to work part-time just to buy a camera. As the saying goes, despair is the ultimate apathy. After that, he stopped caring about me altogether. I quickly became the classic bad example neighbors loved to gossip about. When Bai Jindu said, "So you're Zhang Wendy," he probably meant just that. But I didn't bother thinking much of it, taking him for a passing stranger. I never imagined this stranger would one day barge into my world uninvited. Back then, the houses in the Jiuotong University residential compound stood row upon row. My room was only a wall away from Bai Jindu's. Standing at my window, I could clearly see his door open, a freshly washed T- shirt hanging on his balcony clothesline, fluttering in the sun like a Trent sail. My father adored Bai Jindu and often invited him over. Guests had stayed at our house before, but none had ever entered my room. Yet Bai Jindu was different. One day, as I was tidying my closet, he sauntered right in. I glared at him coldly. Was anyone taught you not to enter someone's room without permission? He shrugged. Huh. Your dad said I can treat this place like my own. Was he ignorant or just shameless? He leaned lazily against the wall, glancing around my room, completely different from Shu King's. I teased him. You get to her room often? Not really, he said. He was proven wrong soon enough. After lunch, I passed Shu King's room and saw her and Bai Jindu sitting on the sofa watching TV. The popular Investiture of the Gods starring Fu Yue was on. I sneered. As if sensing it, he suddenly turned his head. Where are you going? Library. I lied. In truth, I was going to the outskirts to take photos. Unfortunately, my lie was exposed quickly. It mocked him by day, and by night, it was my turn. It stayed out photographing rapeseed flowers in the countryside and missed the last subway. After the bus transfers, I finally made it home. Rushing too fast, I collided with someone in the hallway, and my camera fell to the ground. The person picked it up. It was Bai Jindu. Do you always take a camera to the library? He asked, mocking me. I turned and went upstairs without a word. We had no more contact until one summer evening when the fuse blew, cutting power to the entire building. I leaned by the window smoking, though I'd been smoking for a year. I didn't do it often. No one knows you smoke, do they? Bai Jindu suddenly leaned over. I ignored him. Got a spear. A cigarette landed on his balcony. He picked it up. Biting the filter, his voice laced with lazy amusement. 7 stars thought I was back in Japan. We exhaled smoke through the long summer night. Nothing but the endless chirping of cicadas in our ears. Is Japan nice? I asked. I like Japan, but I don't like the Japanese, he said. I don't like Shanghai. Or Shanghain's people, I said. But you're Shanghain's too. Him not. More than 2 years in Shanghai, and I still saw myself as a stranger. That sense of detachment never left me. I remembered when I first arrived. My cousin's wife had taken Shuking and me to KFC. Shanghai's first KFC was in the Dongfen Hotel by the Bund. It was my first time eating Western fast food, and I spilled ketchup all over myself. Shu King watched me from afar with a condescending look I would never forget. I couldn't speak Shanghainese. Neighbors in the compound called me a country girl, whispering behind my back. I grew quieter and more withdrawn, unable to connect with anyone. He'd never told anyone these things, but separated by a wall. Saying them felt surprisingly easy. Bai Jindu leaned against the railing and chuckled softly after I finished. I finally understood why I'd thought of a fox when I first saw him. He had narrow, slanted eyes that curved when he smiled, sly, almost and utterly indifferent. Making friends isn't that hard, he said. I finished my cigarette, stuffed it out in a soda can, and left without saying goodbye. Sharing a smoke makes us friends now, he called after me. From that day on, we often occupied opposite ends of our balconies late at night, smoking together. If it hadn't been for a letter my mother sent from Japan, Bai Jindu would have remained nothing more than a neighbor. 3.5 years earlier, my mother had ended her long-distance marriage to my father and remarried in Japan. 3.5 years later, she wrote to me for the first time, saying she wanted me to study in Japan. Entrance exams and tuition would all be taken care of. I showed the letter to my father. He asked what I thought. I knew he wanted me to go. In Japan, I would no longer be a burden to him, and it would bring him honor. Pay win minus win. Don't think about it, I said. Leaving my father's room, I passed Shu King's and heard her voice inside. I'm not really close to Aunt Wendy. Country people like her have such weird tempers. I could almost picture her sticking out her tongue, looking innocent. That night I learned Shu King had asked her parents to let her study in Japan too. It came out of nowhere, but I knew the reason. What else could make a girl so determined but love? That same night, I told my father I had decided to go to Japan. Everything went smoothly. Shuking and I applied to the same university. Baijindu attended high acceptance rate and convenient to look after each other. On the day we left, the whole family saw us off. Shuking could barely contain her excitement. Luckily, I'm going to the same school as Jindu minus GEE. I was worried I'd run into bad people over there. Everyone laughed. I said, don't worry. Japan's very safe. There won't be anyone like Shenxing. The harmonious atmosphere shattered. Shuking turned pale. The others looked awkward. Only Baijindu, the outsider, watched me with amused curiosity. Later, as I loaded luggage into the trunk, he followed. I don't know who Shenxing is. But you did that on purpose, didn't you? You heard her outside the door that day. I didn't deny it. How vindictive, he remarked. As country folks hold grudges. He studied me seriously. Anyone ever tell you you look like a lion? Thick, stiff hair and eyebrows, like a lion's mane. And a temper just like one, too. Was that a compliment or an insult? What are you? Den? A fox? He spread his hands. Too bad lions don't eat foxes. Foxes like eating rabbits, I hinted. Over there, Shuking was saying goodbye to her parents. Eyes red as a rabbit's. Yet nothing in this world can be summed up by a single animal. Rabbits bite. Foxes aren't always cunning. And lions aren't always as strong and brave as they seem. We learned that much later. Bottom 1990th Shuking by Jinju, and I set off to study in Japan. As the ship's horn blared, sorrow of parting and hope for the future weighed equally on our hearts. None of us knew that for years to come, the three of us would be tangled together like vines, silent, stubborn, intertwined. On that journey, I brought only two things besides necessities: my camera and the copy of 100 Tales. Before going to Japan, everything I knew of the island nation came from that book. Kenso. In Golden September, a new chapter of my life began. I studied Japanese literature. Shuking majored in media. Baijindu studied electronic information and already spoke fluent Japanese. The best way to fit into a new environment was to join its social circles, and Baijindu was gifted at that. I was the opposite, struggling endlessly with katakana and hiragana. I was so busy those days that I didn't even touch my beloved camera. My first time leaving campus was thanks to a public lecture. During the lecture, a renowned scholar stood on stage glorifying the brutal war of aggression against China as a just war. I was seething when someone spoke in perfect Japanese to refuse to face the crimes of the past, to distort and rewrite history, sensei. Is this the loyalty and honor of Japan? So minus cold Bushido. 3 rows away, Baijindu stood straight and tall. Murmurs erupted through the hall. Under countless stares he walked out. Almost at once I followed. As the door closed, the enraged scholar threw a piece of chalk at us. We walked one after the other onto the playground. The cool wind calmed our boiling blood. Hey! Baijindu turned around. I didn't expect that from you, I said. In Chinese, he said. What about you? Why did you follow? I'm Chinese too, I replied. Perhaps only abroad does one truly understand what motherland means. Baijindu looked at me deeply. Dare to skip class, compatriot? I hesitated. He put his hands in his pockets and walked forward. Come on, I'll show you around Mount Fuji. It was my first skipped class in university. We rented bicycles and rode slowly along the red minus-leaf corridors by Lake Kawaguchi. The sky was a clear blue, the water glistening. Golden reeds, red maple leaves, and snow minus-capped peaks in the distance. The dormant volcano had slept for 300 years. No one knew would erupt, just as we could not predict the future. On the ride back, the taxi played Yamaguchi Mamo Ies, H.I.G. and Bana. The driver, who looked like a Yakuza member, swayed to the music and asked where we were from. Mount Fuji, I said. Have you seen Mount Fuji from Tokyo? Yes. It turned out there were many spots in Tokyo with views of the mountain. Maybe one day, looking up by chance, you'd catch a glimpse of its snow-capped peak. The sun was setting, hovering at the top of Mount Fuji like a flame, melting the snow into a diamond-bright glow. "Congratulations on seeing the diamond Fuji," Bai Jin-du said to me. How wonderful nature was. In that moment, my heart was struck unexpectedly. Neither of us knew our actions in the lecture had spread across campus. The next day, I ran into Shu King downstairs in the dormitory, looking for Bai Jin-du. "Where did you go afterwards?" she asked him. "Mount Fuji," Jin-du said. He glanced at me and smiled faintly, lighting the fire between Shu King and me before watching from the sidelines. Sure enough, Shu King blamed everything on me. "Shang Wendy, you can skip school if you want, but don't drag others down with you." Away from home, Shu King no longer called me aunt, and I no longer wanted to hold back. I like influencing people," I said, "and they like being influenced by me." Shu King hadn't expected me to be so shameless and nearly cried from anger. "Stop acting," I said, stepping closer. "Shang Shu King, heaven watches all." Shu King looked up sharply, staring at me. I smiled and walked out of the campus gate alone, sitting on the flower bed smoking. When I finished the cigarette, Bai Jindu came out too, sitting next to me. "Who exactly is this Shen Xing?" "Shen Xing." A thin figure appeared in my mind. A quiet boy who had barely spoken. Shen Xing was our family tutor. He had been Shu King's tutor. One day, my cousin's wife opened the door to find them tightly embracing. Later, Shu King tearfully claimed Shen Xing had tried to assault her during a lesson. A week later, Shen Xing was fired from his school. The story should have ended there, but a few days later, Shen Xing jumped to his death. Since then, his name had become a taboo in the Shang family. Only I brought it up now and then to provoke Shu King. 100 Tales says a ghost lives in every Onis heart. That was Shu King's ghost. I knew it. After our big fight, Shu King and I acted as if we didn't know each other when we met. That was until Lunar New Year's Eve, when my mother called and invited all three of us to her house for the holiday. I went to her dorm to find her. Bai Jin-du and I agreed to meet at the school parking lot. Before leaving, Shu King got held up by a phone call her parents, talking for half an hour without caring it was an international call. I didn't wait. I left straight away. And so, that New Year's Eve, I took Bai Jin-du to my mother's house. She lived in a traditional Japanese house in Meguro Ward, Tokyo, with the Meguro River flowing behind it from northwest to southeast. A dark-haired little boy opened the door. Yoshida Shote, my half-brother from my mother's second marriage. I'd seen him in photos. My mother and her new husband. Yoshida Gato welcomed us in. The five of us sat cross-legged on tatami mats. Shote quietly asked my mother in Japanese who I was. "She's your older sister, Shote-kun," she told him. Shote hid behind her, eyeing this sudden sister warily. He spoke only Japanese. China and I were strangers to him. I thought I should touch his face.